I met him many years ago at the speakers' conferences and things, and he wrote this fabulous book called Systemology. And for us, in what we do, it's all about systems and processes and checklists. You heard about it this morning. If we don't ask the right questions, we get all sorts of red flag patients. We operate on them and it becomes a train wreck. So in order to fix all of that, we've got our expert specialists on systems and processes and checklists and onboarding and recruiting. And ladies and gentlemen, from that thing, it's the fabulous David Jenyns.
Wow, thank you. Excellent introduction there. Today, we're going to be talking about creating time, reducing errors, and scaling your profits with proven practice systems. So normally, I'd get like a full day to try and talk about this sort of stuff, and I try and make it exciting because it's systems, and we all love systems and processes, but I've got 30 minutes, so I'm going to try and narrow down just to a few key insights for you, hopefully to get those aha moments that get you to go, maybe we can do something a little bit differently. So maybe to start, I'd love to get an idea, why would you want to have systems, documented process, and procedure manuals in place? Dave gave you a few little hints there and tips, but I'd love to hear from you. Why do you think they're important in the businesses that you work in? So just yell it out at me. Perfect. Yep. So staff need to know what needs to be done. So that way you have a level of consistency. No matter which team member steps into a position or if someone's off sick, then someone else can step in and know that something's done to a certain standard. So if you'd like a bag of Skittles, why else might you like to have systems in your practice?
You create value, so the value of your business increases with systems.
100%, especially when it comes to thinking about selling a business or something like that potentially further down the line. The potential acquirer wants to reduce their risk by making sure that the business continues to operate once those key team members leave. So we all know that feeling when you've got a key team member that's essential to the business, and if Sally doesn't come in on Tuesday, invoices don't come out, and it waits until Sally comes back. And you want to make sure that we start to remove that key person dependency. Why else might we want systems in the business?
Streamline processes.
Perfect. Streamlining processes helps to reduce errors and waste and stops double work, which costs money and just makes it painful for everybody if you're fixing up someone else's mistakes. So there's a lot of reasons why. We all know this. I don't think I've ever had a discussion with a room where people have said systems and processes aren't important. So we all agree systems and processes are important. So the next question is, why haven't you systemized your business or the practices that you work in to the level at which you would like it to be? What's gotten in the way of putting systems and processes in place? Too busy? I don't know, Dave, can I keep running you around for Skittles and things like that? All right, some Skittles up there. Oh, okay, we've leveled up now. This is the serious stakes. Why haven't you got systems and processes up to the standard that you would like them to be, even though we all agree how important they are? Time is one of them. Oh, I just don't have time. I don't have time to document my systems and processes. I'm busy enough as it is, just doing my day-to-day stuff, let alone trying to document process. Why else? What gets in the way? Staff compliance. What's the point of creating a system or a process if the team's not going to follow it anyway? It's just a waste of time. I've got all of these processes, but no one's following them. And I'll take one more. What else gets in the way? Up there? Yeah, systems get out of date and interfaces change on Genie software, or something moves, or that button now is over here. So if you've got documented processes with screenshots and things like that, then well, now they're out of date. The new team member looks at it, goes down, gets stuck and goes, oh, this system's broken, I can't follow it anyway. So there's a lot of different reasons that kind of get in the way of actually getting systems and processes documented. Thank you. Question or a comment? Change, yeah, perfect. There we go, that's right. We'll deliver some more chocolates over there. So there you go, the winner. So there are a lot of different reasons why those systems and processes don't get in place. Some real common ones for me. I often hear about time and team not following it, and we're going to have to create hundreds of systems and remove the creativity in business because we don't want to just have robots and all those sorts of things. Things get in the way of that. Now, I'm going to try and bust some of those myths today, and we'll move pretty quickly through this slide deck. And I'm not going to tell you a little bit about my story. I've got a box of my systemology books during the break, and I'll hang around at the end. You can just come and get a book. It tells the story in there, so you don't really need to have me tell you the story today.
David will also sign them for you here.
Ah, there you go.
David, so make sure
Perfect. So we'll be...
sign it. It'll say to your surgeon, please read this.
Yes, that's right. And we'll make systems your most important asset. Now, the way I learnt about systems and processes, because I'm kind of like a serial business owner with lots of different businesses, and the biggest aha moment I had with systems and processes was building a sister company to our digital agency. So I had a digital agency where I was the guy. I was doing the thing. I knew the way to market, and the clients would come to me, team would come to me whenever there was a problem. Hey, Dave knows the solution. And then we started to get a lot of inquiries for video production. And I set up this little separate business, Melbourne Video Production, where I wasn't the guy. I'm not a camera guy. I don't know how to get on the tools or use the editing software or anything like that. So I had to build that business very differently from day number one because I couldn't hop on the tools. And I remember hopping in the car, going on a drive. Our office was in St Kilda and we were out to Bacchus Marsh, and Adrian, my videographer, needed someone to go along with him to support him on the shoot. So I'm sitting in the car and we spend the next 45 minutes, 60 minutes with him asking me questions like, did we pack that second battery? Did I bring the extension cable? Did we email the client to let them know that they shouldn't wear checkered shirts because it doesn't look any good on camera? And we spent the whole 60 minutes just talking about stuff that should have been handled. And then at the end of that shoot, we went back and I said to him, we're going to put a pre-shoot checklist in place. So next time before you go on the shoot and you're at the office, you run through the checklist to make sure that you pack everything. And we email the clients and everybody knows what's happening. Now, about 6 months later, I go out on another shoot. And the discussion that I had in the car on the second shoot was worlds apart from what I had the first time round. He's telling me, oh, this is the type of emotion I want to create in the scene. These are the different, he could visualize the shot and the angles and the cameras. It was all the creative stuff came out. And I had one of those moments where it was a bit of an aha moment where I used to think, oh, systems remove creativity because, you know, we're just creating these robots who follow process. But then I realized systems actually create space which allow creativity. What you want to do is you systemize the routine, everything that has to happen, and then you humanize like everything else. So you systemize the routine and humanize the exception. And then that's when I started to go, systems and processes. Quite a lot of the misconceptions and false beliefs I had, I started to test some of those assumptions. And I want to bust a few of those today. So we talked about some of the reasons you haven't got systems in place. And I want to run through some of the common ones that I hear and bust some of these myths for you. So firstly, you're going to need hundreds of systems. A lot of people think that you're going to have to document every facet of the practice, from how you open up, to the way that you take out the garbage, to the way that you make your coffee, to the way that you set up a studio before someone goes in and does a consultation. Like, people have this thing where they go, oh, there's just going to be so much we have to systemize. And I want to bust that myth today. We'll also talk about business owners are the best people to create systems, or key team members. A lot of people think that the business owner needs to be the one that creates the systems, when oftentimes they're the worst people to be creating the systems because they have no time and they're perfectionists and they don't capture how it's currently going or what's currently working. They try and create these systems of the way that they would like it to be. And then that gets in the way of them actually creating the systems, when sometimes some of the biggest wins that happen in your business is just by making it repeatable and what's already working, and capturing that and making sure everybody rises to that standard. So we'll bust that myth. We'll also talk about your team won't follow systems anyway, so what's the point of creating systems? And that was one that we touched on a little bit earlier, so we'll bust that myth. But the first one, that you're going to need hundreds of systems. I remember hearing this story about Netflix, and one of the founders, Reed Hastings, he talks about, oh yes, we decided as we were starting to scale, we wanted to systemize the business and we were going to make sure that it was dummy proof. And he said, we started systemizing everything so any dummy could work here. The only thing was, only dummies wanted to work there because they over-systemized everything. And I think there's a real fine balance between completely over-systemizing something, introducing red tape, making it more challenging for someone, and getting just enough to guide new team members. So some things will need detailed process. Other things might just need high-level checklists or milestones that you go through. But you want to focus on this idea that simple scales, complex fails. The more complex your systems get, and if you over-engineer the systems, then they're less likely to get adopted. It becomes friction and resistance, and team members don't end up using them, and then again, what's the point of having them? So we really want to make sure that we identify the 80-20. And that's the key here. What are the 20% of the systems and processes that deliver the 80% of the result for the practice? And we dial those in first. We have a process we call the critical client flow to uncover that. It's a really easy exercise. When you grab a copy of the book, it's the first chapter. You can't go wrong. You can even do it on an A4 bit of paper. You don't even need the template in the book. It's just about mapping the linear journey that a client and then like a prospect as they convert through to a client and you deliver the core product or service. So it's a little bit like a customer journey, except it also addresses what the business does to deliver that product or service. So you think about your practice and you think about how do we grab the attention of our potential prospects? Like what marketing methods do we have? When they're ready to go and they raise their hand and they make an inquiry, how do you handle that incoming inquiry? Once you have the sales process, like a consultation, what does that look like? When they're ready to go, do you take money up front? Do you take money at the end of the procedure? How do you onboard them? What does the get you into the system process look like, and the briefing, and make sure you've signed all of the documents? How do you deliver and do the actual work, the procedure, and then how do you get them to come back? Start off by mapping that out. And that's a great place to start when thinking about what am I going to systemize first. Just focus on the systems that drive that, because that's the guts of what the business does. And you can go a step further and think, where in that critical client flow is the pain? And you might go, oh, it's so painful. If we got 20 new clients next month, the wheels of the business just about fall off because it's painful to get them into the system and do the onboarding and the scheduling. Okay, let's narrow in on that part of the critical client flow and dial in the systems and the processes there. But it really is a game of 80-20. You can't systemize everything, so you want to systemize the things that'll have the biggest impact. And all of you have really smart team members. It's not like you're recruiting 15-year-old kids off the street who have zero experience and you need to train them up from the get-go. You're getting experienced team members who might know how to do certain things. So we don't need to tell them how to suck eggs on certain things, but we need to say this is how we do things here and get them up to speed. And we just got to figure out what are the essential systems that we need to get documented. So we've busted the myth that you're going to need hundreds of systems. With the critical client flow, there's probably 10, 15 systems. Start there. Just because you don't document something doesn't mean it's going to magically stop happening in your business. We just want to get really good at certain things that need to happen a certain way. Next up, the business owner is going to be the best one to create the systems. Business owners don't have time. They're busy, and like I said, they often project and imagine the way that they would like things to be, and so they create systems which then become a hurdle because they're dreaming of the way that the business should be. And sometimes, as I said, the best wins just come from capturing what you're currently doing. Figure out who already handles the incoming inquiry, capture what they're doing, and then bring everybody up to that standard. You don't have to have a world-class, amazing incoming inquiry system. Just capture what's already working and working quite well, and then bring everybody up to that standard. So we know every lead that comes in, we know we always grab their phone number, we populate these details into Genie, and we get it all set up and their appointment scheduled, and this is just how we do things here. And that becomes part of the induction and training. But if the team doesn't have the time to do it, there's a couple of little tricks that I can give you to make it easier. And this is a client of ours, Chris from Mulcahy & Co. They're an accountant in regional Victoria, and they help farmers get their books up to speed and their obligations and all those sorts of things. So he started off and did the critical client flow with us. Then the secret here is to understand that documentation and creating systems is a two-person job. You have the person with the knowledge, and then you have the person who does the documentation. And they're two separate people. Don't go to your busiest team members and say, hey, you've got to document all of your processes, because they're going to go, yeah, cool, no worries, I'll just put it on my to-do list and I'll get to it when I've got time. And they never have time. So it never gets done. But if you start to split it out and you record the knowledgeable worker doing the thing in the moment, when they're answering the call, when you're booking someone in, whatever, you record that and you get the person who does it to a good standard and you get someone else to then watch that recording. So it's about recording what's happening in the moment. So it's a two-person job. And you just capture, as I said, what's happening. Don't try and imagine the way that it should happen. Find out who answers the phone the best and record what it is that they're saying on the phone. And then that becomes the 5 questions that you ask when you have an inbound inquiry come in. And then you just need a central place to store this stuff. So you just think about, where is your knowledge going to be? It starts off with just videos. This might be a little screen recording there. It might be an iPhone video there. It could be a Zoom. You just start recording different tasks happening in the business. And then your systems champion, which we'll talk about, your systems champion takes those videos and then adds a little bit of documentation to it. And now here's the checklist for the way that we do things. The first time someone does a task, they watch the video and they see the knowledgeable person do it. And the next time, they just look at the bullet points that have been written. They don't have to watch the video every single time. And then that gets them up to speed really quickly. So you've got to find a systems champion. That's another little tip there. When we think about it being a two-person job, the other person, that documenter, we call it a systems champion. Someone inside your business who it's part of their responsibility to think about your systems and processes and keeping it front and centre. So we killed that myth that the business owners are the best ones to create the systems or document the systems. The next one we want to have a little bit of a look at here is that what's the point of creating systems if your team's not going to follow them anyway? We'll jump into that one. So who's got some procedure manuals? Does everybody have a procedure manual? No? Okay, so there's probably about half the room. It's one thing to have a procedure manual. It's another thing to have the team actually follow it. It's not worth anything if it sits in a binder on a bookshelf and no one even really knows it's there. So it's more than creating documentation. People think, when they think about systemization, that it's a procedures manual. But it's so much more than that. What we need to do is create a systems-driven culture where people think in terms of systems. If there's a mistake or something goes wrong in the business, the first thing that we do is look to the system. Was there a step that's not covered in the system that we need to add into next time? We always go to the system first. It's secondary if it was in the system and then the person didn't follow the process. That's another problem. But we always blame the system first. And there's a range of things that we can do about building up systems that create this systems culture and leading by example. And I think as you start to introduce a systems culture, especially if you don't have one already, the biggest resistance you're going to get is from existing staff. Because we've always done it this way. Why do I need to change? Or some staff members create this little black box where no one really knows what they're doing. And they do that for job security. Because, we can't get rid of that person because we don't know really what they're doing and who's going to fill that role. So now you end up having this team member who might be operating suboptimally and you keep them around just because you're too afraid to get rid of them. And that initial resistance that you get up front from your existing staff, once you get over that, what normally happens, most people introduce a systems culture, they try it for a little bit, they'll try 3 months, 6 months, and they'll come up against all of this resistance, and then they'll go, the team's not following it, and then they'll let it go. And they didn't get over the hump, because the hardest bit always happens up front. The good news of all of this is there's never been a better time in history to systemize than right now. Because of COVID, everybody is accepting of change. There's change at home, there's change at work, there's change in the community. So when you say, hey, we're making this change and we're creating systems and processes, we're doing that because we need to evolve. We know there are going to be times where you need to take time off because you've got COVID, or maybe a family member has and you need time out. And I need to make sure that, so you've got a job to come to when you come back, that things keep moving smoothly. And when you want to take a holiday, you can take a holiday, and I'm not going to be on the phone following you up saying, oh, where's this patient up to? I can't see it in, I know you're on holiday, but can you give them a call? Is that okay? Like, by getting systems and processes and having other team members able to step in, let the team know that it's a win for them. This is not just about the business owner systemizing everything so they can go lie on the beach. It's about making sure that we build a systems-driven culture so we all have a better work environment. So those existing staff, though, they're the ones you need to work with the most. And you can do little things. You need to start to change habits. Maybe you create little yellow sticky notes and you put them all around the office. Am I going to do this again? Let's create a system. Or maybe you create a channel. Maybe it's in a weekly team meeting, or if you've got a Slack channel or something like that, depending on how the team communicate. Have a channel to showcase and talk about systems. Share systems, celebrate systems wins, give prizes for team members who create them and follow them and improve systems. Put QR codes, like the whole goal here is to make systems easy and accessible at the point at which you need them. So if you have a system around how you close up the practice at the end of the night, get a QR code that when scanned on someone's phone, it takes them to the system on the end of day procedure, and stick that QR code next to the door when they're locking up, or the light switch. Or if they use a particular piece of equipment and it's got to be set up a certain way, have a QR code that sits on the machine that can be scanned on the phone so it's easy. Because they need to be able to make it, if there's any type of friction with systems and accessing them, then that's a reason not to use them. But you want to make it as easy as possible. And you start to put some of these things in place and you start to change habits. Now, it's easy with new team members. Because new team members, if you get your recruitment, your onboarding right, your induction, then this is all they've ever known. And there is no real resistance with new team members. That's why it's so hard to introduce and change culture, because you've got to first deal with all the team members that are just used to doing things a certain way. But once you get it right, every new team member that comes on board, it gets easier and easier. And then you get all the benefits that we talked about at the start that come from having a systems-driven business.
So you're getting very young staff there.
Yeah, that's right. Get them early, that's right. Yeah. I heard there is staffing troubles these days. That's right, get them younger. And you build systems thinking into your process around hiring. You put a couple of systems in the position description or the job ad, and you say, these are the types of things you're going to be doing. And you present that up front. What that does is people who won't gel with the culture then won't apply for the position. And you ask systems questions in the interview. And when they onboard, you teach them the critical client flow. And you say, here are the 15 to 20 essential systems for our business. And you do that within the first 3 months of them starting. And now they start to get this idea that, they're a systems-driven business. And people will opt out if they don't fit into that culture. And they do it up front. That's why it gets easier as we go. But it all starts with you. And a great example of that, this guy, Dave Porter, runs a company called PorterVac. They clean roofing gutters and things like that. And he identified his systems champion called Kane. It was a guy who sat on the front desk. And it was funny, we taught him this process. We went through the critical client flow. He went out in the field and wore a GoPro and followed some of the tradespeople around for the day, how they set up the equipment, what they said to the clients, how they emailed back head office, all those sorts of things throughout the day, and made just a whole bunch of little videos, stored them in a central location, and then Kane went through, because he was just a young apprentice guy, watched the video, pulled out all of the key bullet points, and then those became the systems and processes, the foundation that they got started with. But the real change happened with Dave Porter. He was the business owner. Now, his normal default response was if something was wrong, he would just blow up and yell at the staff and say, you should have done this, you should have done that. And at the end of the day, when trucks would come back, the tradespeople weren't keeping them clean, they weren't restocking it, refueling it for the next day. They'd just come back at the end of the day and then they'd leave the keys and they'd finish up. And the change happened in Dave Porter, where rather than him yelling at the staff, he said, when I knew I got it, we became systems driven, was when he said, I thought, if all problems in business are systems problem, how do I fix this at the systems level? And he put a checklist in place where before anybody can return the truck at the end of the night and give the keys back, they have to run through the checklist, which is on a clipboard, which is right near where they hang the keys. And it's, have I filled up the petrol? Have I done this? Have I done that? And you're not allowed to put the keys back on the board until you've done everything. And that's where it changed for him as the business owner, because he went to work on the systems rather than thinking that it was a staff problem. And you need to get real key team members to have this breakthrough. So that's what we were going to cover today. We busted a few myths. There's quite a few more myths in the book. There's 7 that I talk about in the book. I might have opened a can of worms. You might have some questions of your own. I know we're pretty much right on time, so...